A king who never lost a battle vanished. An emperor escaped his own murder. A prisoner survived the one place no one survives. 9 men, 9 impossible truths, and history buried every single one. One of these men left behind a fortune no one has ever found. One of them chose death over dishonor and made it beautiful. And one of them didn't just change a war, he changed who wins it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how each of these men bent history, and the one pattern connecting all 9. Because once you see it, you'll never read a history book the same way again.
History isn't lying to you. It's just leaving out the parts that would terrify you. This is Timeline Secrets.
No lectures, no boring timelines, just 9 true stories back to back, each one more insane than the last. Let's start with the one who had the whole world and still wasn't satisfied. By the time most men are settling into a career, this one had already erased the most powerful empire on earth. He didn't inherit greatness, he outran it. Every city that shut its gates against him didn't exist a week later. But here's what they don't teach you. His own men, the ones who followed him across deserts and mountains, eventually stopped. Not because they were beaten, because he wouldn't stop. Picture soldiers who hadn't seen their families in over a decade, standing at a riverbank, refusing to take one more step, not out of cowardice, but exhaustion of the soul. And picture him, alone in his tent, weeping, not from defeat, from the horror that there was nothing left to conquer. He'd go on to die young, in a room full of men who all wanted his throne, and what happened to his empire after is almost more shocking than anything he did while alive. But that's a story for another day. Because right now, someone else is about to vanish completely. Picture a city under siege, walls 1,000 years old finally starting to crack. Everyone inside knows tonight is the end, and the man wearing the crown makes a choice no emperor before him ever had to make. Some say he ripped off his royal robe so the enemy soldiers wouldn't know who they were killing. Some say he was last seen running straight into the chaos, sword raised, refusing to be captured alive. And some say he simply disappeared. Think about that moment. Not the fall of a city, the fall of a person. A man who woke up that morning still an emperor, and by nightfall had to decide whether to die as one, or vanish as a nobody just to survive. To this day, no one has ever confirmed what happened to his body, which means somewhere in the wreckage of that final night, the truth is still buried. And speaking of things buried, wait until you hear about the fire that erased an entire city in 4 days. A single spark, in a single oven, on a single street, and within days, the most powerful city in Europe was ash. But here's the part that should terrify you. The fire didn't spread because it was unstoppable. It spread because people in charge were too slow, too proud, and too afraid to act. The mayor was warned. He looked at the flames and said a woman could piss it out. Hours later, that same fire was leaping across entire streets on its own. Families grabbed whatever they could carry and ran, watching everything they owned collapse behind them in real time. Some didn't run fast enough, and the official death toll, historians now believe it's a lie, because no one could count the bodies of the poorest people, who left no record they ever existed at all. That fire exposed exactly who a city protects and who it forgets. Which brings us to a warrior who made the opposite choice. Instead of running from an impossible fight, he walked straight into one. Imagine being handed an order to surrender and deciding the order must be fake, not because you're delusional, because everything you were trained to believe says surrender is worse than death. For years, not days, years, this man lived in the jungle, convinced the war was still happening, convinced his country needed him to keep fighting. Every attempt to bring him back out was met with the same answer: prove it to me, or I stay. Think about the loneliness of that. Watching decades pass, aging alone in the wilderness, holding on to a version of loyalty so absolute, it cost him everything a normal life could have given him. When he finally did come out, the world he returned to no longer existed. But loyalty that extreme has a darker cousin, and it lived inside a prison that Stalin didn't want the world to know existed at all. There was a place where you didn't get arrested, you simply stopped existing. No trial worth the name, no goodbye to your family, just a knock at 3 a.m., and then nothing. Officially, you were never there. Unofficially, Thousands were. Prisoners were given numbers instead of names, specifically so guards could never form a human connection with them. That wasn't an accident. That was the entire design. Somewhere a wife spent decades not knowing if her husband was alive. A child grew up never learning what happened to a parent who simply vanished one night. That silence, that not knowing, was the real weapon. But secrets that big don't stay buried forever. And speaking of things the world got wrong for centuries, one man reached an entire continent, and history handed the credit to someone else. Centuries before the name Columbus meant anything, a small group of sailors pushed further west than anyone thought possible, and found land no European had ever set foot on. Then they left, and the story almost died with them. No parade, no royal announcement, just a few sagas passed down by word of mouth that most of Europe dismissed as myth for 800 years. Imagine achieving something that big, something that would one day reshape the entire world, and having almost nobody believe you. Not because you were lying, because the truth was too early for anyone to accept. Being first doesn't matter if no one's watching, but an empire that everyone was watching, one that ruled for 6 centuries, was about to collapse in the most brutal way imaginable. At its height, this empire touched 3 continents. Sultans lived in palaces built specifically to make visitors feel small. And then, in the span of 1 generation, all of it came apart at once. The final sultan didn't lose his empire in one dramatic battle. He watched it get carved away piece by piece, ally by ally, until the palace that once controlled continents controlled nothing beyond its own walls. Picture living inside a collapse you can't stop, watching the empire your family built over centuries dissolve during your own lifetime, knowing history will remember you only as the one who lost it. Empires collapse, but sometimes what an empire leaves behind is more powerful than the empire itself. Like a treasure so valuable, people are still hunting for it today. They weren't just warriors, they were bankers to kings, richer than most nations. And then, in a single coordinated night, their leaders were seized, their order dismantled, and their fortune gone. The king who ordered the arrests owed them a fortune he could never repay. That's not a coincidence historians ignore. That's the whole motive. Somewhere in the panic of that single night, someone made a choice. Hide it, move it, bury it, and never got the chance to tell anyone where. Which means the secret didn't die with an idea. It died with one person, in silence. Buried treasure is one kind of secret. But one man's secret didn't just stay hidden. It changed who won an entire world war. Picture living a double life so convincing that the people trusting you with their darkest secrets never once suspected you were feeding those secrets to the other side. One mistake, one slip, one suspicious glance, and it's over. Not just for you, for everyone counting on you. The information this person passed along helped shape decisions that cost or saved hundreds of thousands of lives. And they did it knowing that if caught, there would be no trial, no mercy, just silence. That's the part people forget about spies. It's not the glamour. It's the isolation, carrying a secret so heavy you can never share the weight of it with anyone you love for the rest of your life. 9 different people, 9 different centuries. But look closely, and they all did the same thing. They made one decision in one moment that the rest of the world wasn't ready to understand yet. Alexander refused to stop. The emperor refused to be captured. The samurai refused to surrender. And every single one of them was written off, misunderstood, or erased, until history finally caught up to them. Here's the part that actually matters for you. Every one of these people faced a moment where the easy thing was to fold, to accept the story everyone else believed, and every one of them chose otherwise, even when no one was there to see it. That choice is still available to you, right now, in whatever room you're standing in. If one of these 9 stories deserves its own full episode, tell me which one in the comments, and I'll build it next. And if you want the next secret history tried to bury before it disappears again, hit subscribe, because we're just getting started.